get started. I know we're running a few minutes behind here, so let me get the presentation going. And let me just welcome everyone on the call. So thank you so much for coming, by the way, everyone. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Cindy, for volunteering to moderate for us today and to stick with us. And I'll let Lisa introduce herself in 1 minute here. But before that, let me introduce myself. I am the CEO and President of Propel Leadership Solutions, and our focus is on how to connect innovation to inclusion. And what we're really excited about, and having done work for over 20 years now in the area of technology, is that we've noticed that there is a lot of commitment to gender equality, but one of the things that was missing was how do you really harness that the benefit of the innovation and the creative thinking that comes from having gender balanced teams. So the work that we do really harnesses that and allows organizations to get the benefits of it using innovation. So that's really cool. And so we've been doing this together. I'll let Lisa introduce herself. She's here on the call as well.
Hi there. I'm managing partner of Propel Leadership and also co-director along with Marguerite of the Toronto Witty Network, which is newly launched. Just in terms of background, I'm a career and leadership advisor for the last 13 years, including executive coaching, career program development, and team effectiveness training as well. With the background in marketing communications and corporate branding, mostly in telecom sector. So I'm happy to support Marguerite in this innovation lab today. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun, actually. Hopefully you guys will really enjoy it. And I just want to give you a little bit of background on the innovation method that we're going to talk about today. This innovation lab process is used all over the world, thousands of companies, over 70 countries, 11 languages. So it's a fairly well accepted innovation method. It's been used at some of the largest companies in the world, and in the United States, it's the academic headquarters would be at Columbia Business School, but it is being taught at all the brand name schools that you would know of in their innovation programming. And I'll explain why it is. But today, we're going to walk through not only knowing a little bit about the SIT method and the model, which we'll talk about, but we want to apply it a little bit today. So we want you to get your hands wet, to get involved and engaged with this process. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the process is, and then we're going to apply it. So we're going to spend some time with that. Hopefully you'll get some real interesting value out of it today. And that's our promise, is that you will get challenged to think a little differently. And we're hoping that not only that you'll learn something new today, but you'll be able to take some of this back into your work and use it with your teams. So that's for us. Now, do we have a few minutes to do this? I think we do. Anybody want to introduce themselves?
Yeah, this is Saman. I'm an RF engineer in telecommunications. I'm working for T-Mobile here in Southern California, United States.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Marianne Marone, and based out of Pennsylvania, and been in IT since 1982, and right now an system architect, solution architect in a healthcare company.
Cool. Well, hopefully you guys will get something that you could take right back into the work that you're doing, okay? And it's very interesting when we talk about innovation. It means so many different things to different people. And, where do we use innovation, right? How do we know that we need innovation? And for us, it's particularly relevant these days because, a lot of organizations are having to rethink a lot of things, both externally. They're having to think about how do we respond to new pressures, competitive pressures, to develop new products, dealing with change, but also internally saying, well, what do we do with the people? How do we manage our restructuring? How do we look at reducing costs? how do we manage our projects more effectively and efficiently, right? How do we bring creativity into that? Going forward, how do we bring an innovation lens to our strategy and build a culture where everyone feels that they can, that their ideas are valued? And how can we rethink really, and this is our last point, how can we really rethink some of the social issues that are facing us as organizations today that are critical to our success? How can we put a new lens on that and think about it more creatively? And these are all excellent places to start and good places to apply the mindset of innovation. So, just really quickly, when we first start off and when we talk about innovation, a lot of people are like, well, innovation means different things to different people. So if you go into Google and you type in what is innovation, you're getting 77 million results. I think that should be 77 million results. And that means basically, it could be billions of results, but 77 million results. Essentially, everyone has a different definition of what innovation is. It's one of those words that we use a lot. So innovation could be applied just like the same word, like leadership or strategy, because everyone means something slightly different when they ask what is innovation. And this is really important, especially as we are thinking, hey, we've got a lot of change happening here. We really could use innovative thinking. What does that actually mean? So put it in the chat if you have an idea. All right. When you talk about innovation, what do you mean by innovation, or what does your organization mean? Wait for a second. Can I see the chat? I don't know if I can. Let's see. All right, well, let's move on. For us, the innovation really has a definition. And innovation for us is an ability to think and act differently in a useful and effective way. So for us,
Marguerite, I'm just going to tell you, and I'm going to interrupt with some of the chat box stuff because I can see it, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do. I can't see it.
So definition of innovation, thinking outside of the box, bringing up new ways of work or products and processes, being curious to look for new ways. Those are some of the answers for innovation.
All amazing. All amazing. And I would agree with most of that. We're going to talk a little bit about the thinking outside the box is really fun as a definition. But for us in our working today, when we say thinking outside the box or more creatively, that means something so different to different people, right? So for us, when we talk about innovation and when we look at the term innovation from a dictionary perspective, then it really talks about it being thinking and acting differently. So you're going to be doing something different than you normally would do. Okay, so that could be thinking out of the box or thinking creatively, but you're going to think and you're going to do something differently. And what you're going to do is produce an outcome that's useful and effective. And if we do that, we have now actually produced an innovation, right? So innovation for us is a toolkit. It's something that we can learn to do to think and act differently and create something useful and effective. And that's how we typically define innovation, is as in terms of results, okay? Something new and useful and effective. So for us, if we have a process that gets us to something new and feasible and valuable, that is the typical definition for what an innovation is, okay? So it is a process to getting to innovation. It might be creative thinking, might be thinking out of the box, but that in itself is not innovation. The innovation is when we come up with something that's new, feasible, and valuable. Now that is an innovation, okay? So that'll be our working definition. And when you do that, when somebody has gone through that process, that means it's something that you can learn and everybody can learn it, right? Everyone can apply it. Everybody can create new, feasible, and valuable ideas that really benefit your organization, whether you're an individual, whether you're a team, or whether you're an organization. And we believe right across the organization that everyone should be challenged and everybody should be educated in how to bring their best ideas to the table to create new, valuable, and feasible ideas, okay? So we don't do innovation. Innovation shouldn't be just one team that's sort of stuck in one part of the organization that's quote unquote innovating. Innovation is everywhere. And it should be everywhere, whether in ship and receiving, R&D, and finance, or whatever. everyone should be putting their best ideas to the table. So for us, the inclusive innovation process takes innovation as an ability to think and act differently and applies it to the area of inclusion, applies it to the area of um, some of the social pieces that we're looking at. So especially when we're looking at a business case for diversity and inclusion, it sort of says, well, what's that next step? And how can we apply an innovative lens to diversity and inclusion or any kind of social innovation? So that's really exciting, and I will speak more about that if you want to. Okay. Oh, let's get into how we can do this, right? And what the SIT model and our approach and how to really drive innovation. And hopefully, again, you can use this and take something away with you. The way forward for us is to how do we help managers implement a team-specific strategy using inclusion? So we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. We're going to take a look at what problem solving is. We're going to take a look at what inclusive teams look like. And innovation methodology, and we're going to converge on some solutions that can be implemented, okay? Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and how we're going to do it is by looking at this methodology. Now, has anyone here been in those meetings? Okay, you call people together to, I don't know, brainstorm, come up with new ideas, think out of the box to solve a problem, right? And everyone has their hands up, everyone is putting their best ideas to the table. And sometimes we get a scenario where, some people are zoned out, some people are not engaged, some people are thinking about what they're going to make for dinner that night, some people are totally in it, right? And we have this team dynamic that is at play when we bring groups of people together. And what we have seen is that many organizations have decided, well, okay, bringing people around the table isn't always as effective. So what we'll do is we'll ask people to put their ideas down in sticky notes, and we'll organize those ideas up on a wall. And that'll be our way of gathering ideas. Now, while that is better, I must add, is that really driving us towards new and useful and innovative? What we're finding and what we have seen in research is that the traditional brainstorming and even the advanced forms of brainstorming, which is kind of the sticky notes and sort kind of model, they don't necessarily produce the best ideas. And there is some very good reasons for that. It really comes down to the dynamics around the table. And, if I'm sure everybody here has been around that table at one point in the other, a time in the other, and people are like, okay, put your ideas out. Let's come up with some ideas to solve this problem or whatever it is. A couple of things are going on. Sometimes people don't want to bring their best ideas to the table because they're nervous that other people are going to take those ideas, right? So it's a fear of theft. Or they are concerned that the idea isn't good enough, right? So there's this risk that you may think before bringing an idea to the table. Do I really want to share this? Are people going to make fun of it? Are they going to think I'm really stupid for bringing that there? So there's all sorts of reasons why people are not necessarily sharing their best ideas around the table. And that is what the research has found for us. So what we are looking for is, and what I believe the model that we're going to talk about does really well, is something called near, far, and sweet. So it's really called the sweet spot for innovation. And when you think about it, the best ideas, typically when we come together and we're looking for ideas, it's either usually one that we get these kind of ideas that are really incremental and they're good ideas, but they're not really super creative, right? So we call those near ideas. They're near to the existing situation. It might be something which is bigger, it might be a different color, it might be less expensive, right? So these are things that are good ideas. They produce innovative value, meaning it's creating new value, but they aren't highly creative, right? Available to be implemented, but lower on the creativity. And then if you want a really creative idea, you might go way far out and you'll say, okay, well, that's a highly creative idea, but it's a little bit further from our present day reality and harder to implement. So what we're really looking for is those ideas that are kind of in that middle, that sweet spot that say, these are ideas that are higher in creativity, but they're also close enough to the existing situation that we can actually do them. So those are the kind of ideas that we're going to be really focusing on And we'll be asking you, is that a sweet spot idea? Does it have both that creative piece, but it also has the implementation, right? It has to be feasible. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So what prevents us from getting there, right? And I don't know if anyone has done this. I mean, I'm sure I just did this yesterday, where you're kind of looking for something. You know, something is there. Where are my glasses? Where are my keys? You know, where's my wallet? Right? We've misplaced things, and you know, there's something that's like right in front of us, but we just don't see it. And so I'm not sure if anyone else has done that. You can just tell me yes or no in the chat. But I certainly have. We call this fixedness, right? So fixedness doesn't mean that you are, you know, like stupid in any way. Fixedness is a biological mechanism that we have, and it's a shortcut that we have in the world. So it's really a survival mechanism, and it comes out of behavioral psychology, the term cognitive fixedness. So fixedness means that we have a shortcut. We have a certain way of doing things, certain way of thinking about things. And if we are looking to go outside of that, it's very hard for us to see. So this survival mechanism allows us to be able to react really quickly, right? So if you see a tiger, you are going to jump immediately, right? Because you don't have to think about it. It is just there. That's part of our fixedness. When we see danger, we respond, right? It's all good to have until we need to change, all right? So fixedness, it enables us to think fast and efficiently, but it really hampers us when we're looking at innovation, okay? And the reason for that is fixedness is because it's the shortcuts that we take. And matter of fact, the more education you have, the more shortcuts that you get in life, okay? So we know how to do things faster and more efficiently. And that is great until we're trying to be innovative, right? The more education you have, the more experience you have, the faster you can operate. Great. But now we're going to say, come outside of that box, if you want to call it that, and think differently. It's very difficult for us to do on our own. So when we are working within organizations, what we find is that there is a high degree of fixedness. There's many different types of fixedness, but acquired fixedness is one of them. That is a really big one. And these are habits, the way that we do things around here. It's like a culture. It's the things that we don't even question. Why do we, I don't know, answer the phone in the way that we do? Why do we hire people in the way that we do? Why do we invoice people the way that we do? And so it's been like passed down from one cohort to the next, one generation to the next. And we have this fixedness in our organizations where we can't even see it. We don't even know how to question it because it's just kind of our default, right? So just as a fun exercise, if everyone could do this, just grab a piece of paper, any piece of paper, and draw 3 circles. Okay, just do a quick exercise with me. I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. And I'm doing it for a reason. I'm doing it because, we're going to illustrate something. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to just think about 3 circles, any 3 circles, right? And what we want to illustrate is if your drawing looks like any one of these examples. Does it look something like this? Something like that? Something like this? Like that? Or like that? Any kind of symmetry in your drawing. And I'd say that about 95% of the people who ever do this exercise actually experience this phenomenon where when we are asked to do something, we kind of default back into our previous learning. And our previous learning, and we learned this when we were toddlers pretty much, is to draw things in symmetry, right? So if we're going to draw things in 3s, it's going to be symmetrical. And so we have a symmetrical fixedness. When we look at things, we like things to be balanced. When we work in 3s, we like to have those 3 things in order in our mind, okay? And that is wonderful and it's great, except when we are looking to do something new. Sometimes we can't see beyond the symmetry because it's our default, if that makes sense, okay? This plays out all over the place. And our cognitive fixedness, we know from the research and from our experience that it is the number one driver behind us getting stuck when it comes to innovation and producing those ideas, those near to the situation ideas that are default ideas. Like we can generate lots of ideas, but they're not necessarily creative ideas. Okay, we can solve problems, but we're going to default to our past experiences where we've seen success before or we've seen other people have success. And that means that those solutions aren't highly creative. They are okay solutions. They might produce results, but not necessarily creative results. So we're going to keep working on our sweet spot results, right? So how do we do this? How can we move to an inclusive innovation, outcomes-driven strategy? And before we get there, we need to start thinking about the problems that we want to solve. And so I want to do this example for you because we thought this was really great. And this is a typical problem that a lot of organizations face, which is the ability to attract and retain women in tech. So if that is sort of that middle piece here, that is our situation that we want to fix, right? Not being able to attract or retain, in this case, women who are in tech. So what we can do is, and if you're familiar with this tactic, this is called the 5 whys in some way. The SAT method sort of expands that. We kind of take a look at why this is the way that it is. And we asked questions and we said, well, okay, so we're in an organization and we want to have more women. We want to attract more women with certain types of technical skills to our workforce. Why can't we do it? Well, one of the reasons potentially is if you go down here, is that women who have got these technical skills, they have lots of choice, and because they're in high demand. And they can go to lots of different places, right? So they're sought after, and these women are going to have a preference on the kind of organization that they want to work for. So it's going to be more competitive to be able to get them. And why is that? Well, a lot of people who and they would prefer, in this case, anyways, when we were doing this analysis, they would prefer to go to an organization not only that values them, but an organization where they won't feel alone and where there's other women. And so why is that a problem for us? Well, it might be a problem because we don't have as many women in tech in our organization. We might have lost them. Why is that? Well, because they didn't feel that there was an opportunity for advancement. And why is that? Well, they didn't feel that their voices were being valued, okay, or their contribution was being valued. So now we have a little bit of a story here. We have an organization that says, well, women didn't feel valued. So if they were looking for advancement, they couldn't find it, they left. And then when we're looking to hire more women, those women are looking at our organization and saying, well, how come you don't have very many women, right? And so now we're not able to attract these women to our organization. And now we keep going. We're like, well, okay, by not having enough women at the table, we don't get this balanced thinking. We don't get this diversity of thought to be able to best serve our serve our customers. And it results in a loss of productivity and potential clients. So now we've taken this symptom, which is really not attracting women in tech, to really open this up, okay? It really broadens the conversation for an organization to say, well, where should we be attacking this issue? Should we be attacking it right there? And this is what we call the undesired phenomenon. So we start with, when we're doing this analysis, what is really undesired here? What is this undesired phenomenon? And then we're going to ask some questions about why is it undesired? And we're going to say, well, so what? So we'll be building out our business case. So why is it an undesired phenomenon? And then why do we care about this issue? So in this particular case, we know it's an issue. Why is an issue? Well, this is not the same for every organization, so it's not meant to be. But this is particularly for some organizations. This is some of the reasons why. And why is it an issue? Well, because you might be losing clients. So, and sorry if you hear any little noise, children's noises behind me, because hey, I'm working from home. Okay, so that we're going to start there and say, well, let's make sure that we are talking about the right problem when we are starting to work on any kind of innovative solution. So this is a really interesting model, something that you can do. What is this undesired phenomenon? Why is it an issue? The second thing is, now if we have taken a look at our problem set, now what do we do? How do we come up with a new creative idea? How do we solve this? And the SIT approach that we're going to be talking about, which stands for Systematic Inventive Thinking, is based on some research that was done about 25 years ago. And the professor who did it took a look at patents, and he asked a question in his research, and he said, well, what is common amongst patents that are successful that are not present in patents that are unsuccessful? Like, is there a pattern? Is there something that these successful patent holders did differently than the unsuccessful ones did? Okay, that was his research. This is his research question. And indeed, he found that there was, for those who were coming up with the most successful ideas, they followed a set of patterns in the way that they developed those ideas. And that is where the SAT approach comes from, because these are thinking tools that are based on the way that the most successful ideas are created. So that was the initial research done 25 years ago, and it's been validated now over 2 million times and used in thousands of applications. So we know that it's really about how we approach a problem more so, okay, how we think about it, how we ask questions about it, that will get us to the most successful idea. So I think that this is a really interesting approach. And there's, after this, if you want to find out more about it, we're happy to share some of the white papers, some more information about the actual method itself. But it has been applied very broadly in all sorts of areas, right? So let's just take a quick look at one of the patterns that's called division, and see how it works. So there is I don't know if anyone has tried this before, called par-baked bread or half-baked bread. And so if you're familiar with it, basically it is half-baked bread. So you take it out of the freezer, you put it in the oven, and you have fresh bread basically in 15 or 20 minutes. And so what they did is they divided the time that it took to bake fresh bread. And when they divided it, they were able to come up with a new product, essentially, which is interesting. And there was a product, and everyone is familiar, especially these days, with Amazon. And if you were in a big major city center, Amazon is able to deliver packages to you within hours, right? So if you're in New York City and you need to get diapers and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can pretty much get diapers before 8 o'clock in the evening, and you can get it within hours, okay? So how do they do that? How does this big corporation get you the kind of diapers that you like within hours if you need it, as an example? And they do something called anticipatory shipping. They have used their buying database to be able to understand what people will want, essentially, before they actually purchase it, and they ship it close to a depot near you. That's why they can get it to you in hours. And so what they've done is they took a look at their shipping process, and they shifted things around and said, well, what would happen if we started shipping before somebody purchased it? Would that be helpful? Would it be useful? The H&M example is a really fun one, especially if you like to shop. If you go in and you're going to say an H&M, this is just a traditional shopping process. Again, it's one of that fixed things, right? We go in, we try on clothes, we make a decision, we step out, we get into line, we pay, etc., and we move on. But what would happen if we moved around one of those processes? And in this case, what would happen if we allowed people to pay while they were in the dressing room? So they would go in, they would try things on, you would make a decision, you were able to swipe and pay right in the dressing room, step out, and go on your way. What would that be like, right? Would we like this? Yes or no, right? I know I would like it. They certainly don't have this here in Canada. I don't think they have it in the US, and I believe that they did this experiment in the United Kingdom and in the UK. So they are allowing you to be able to pay in the dressing room. Now, why would that be beneficial? Why would that be useful? Would people want this? And that really should be our first way of thinking. Is this useful to us? And then the second thing should be to say, well, is it doable? So if you're thinking about that sweet spot illustration, you say, well, is this creative enough? And it's like, yeah, it's pretty creative. It's pretty interesting. Why can't we do this, right? Why haven't we done this? And then the other piece is, can we do it? And so we've got that creativity piece and the feasibility piece coming together. The next is an example about the upside down classroom, if you've ever heard of this term, or the flipped classroom, where they teach the lectures, or they have students go through the lectures in the evening, and they do the homework during the day with the students. So when they're day-to-day in the classroom, they're answering questions, they're helping the students do homework, and in the evening the kids listen to their lectures. So what they did is they took the time of day, they took a look at the education system, and they said, well, what would happen if we flip this around? And what would be the benefit? So a lot of kids actually love this because they get a chance to really deepen their learning with a teacher, and they spend the time that they would have done studying by themselves at night just listening to content. So what do all of these things have in common? What they've done in different ways is that they've taken a look at their process and they've reorganized it in one way or the other, whether it's the time to bake bread, or whether it's the way that we shop, right? Or the way that we do education. What they've done is they've taken a look at what was already existing and then they moved it around. They asked themselves some really interesting questions, and then they said, well, does this make sense? Is this useful? And what this does is it breaks our fixedness. It breaks our default way of doing things to give us a better solution. Now, what we've been talking about is a process called function follows form. I'm sure everybody has heard of form following function, right? But function follows form is a methodology that we use, and we found it's extremely helpful in coming up with creative ideas. So where you start with the existing situation, you start with your retail solution, you start with your existing, whatever it is, the existing product or process or whatever service, you reorganize it and using one of these 5 tools, you come up with a new virtual situation, right? So now you've come up with your idea where you've got retail and you're now going to pay while you're in the dressing room. You've come up with your virtual idea. And then you should ask the question, why should I do this, right? Is there a benefit to it? Why would somebody want to buy this? And then you're like, yeah, this is not such a bad idea after all. Maybe there is a good reason why somebody would want this, right? I think, a lot of people would want it. Okay? You're right there, and you have the ability to swipe and pay and walk out the door. I think a lot of people would take advantage of it. And so the second question is, can we do it? And I think the technology is there as well for us to do this. And a lot of people are very familiar with doing self-checkout as well. So the question is, should we do it? Is there a benefit? Can we do it? There's feasibility. So we've got those 2 pieces to our innovation sweet spot. And if we can do that, then we've got an idea that's worth pursuing. And so that's how we go about this a little differently. Other innovation models take a look at the form first, and then they actually ask the function. They're like, well, let's go and talk to customers, let's observe people, let's come up with ideas, and let's test it, right? In this case, we're doing something a little different, and it comes up with different kinds of ideas. So these are the 5 different types of tools that we use. And again, today we won't have a chance to go through all 5 of them. But probably you got a little vision of how division might work. Division is a fantastic tool set to help us break our fixedness by forcing us to reorganize things. But subtraction is the one that we're going to work on today. And subtraction happens to be, all of us around the world. There's probably just about under 100 people who are practitioners of SIT. And let's have our special ones that we like the best. Mine is subtraction, so I hope you don't mind. We're going to walk through that one today. Subtraction is taking a look at your existing process, product, or service, and subtracting a core component rather than adding. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a example. So we know what our process is. We're going to list out our internal components or steps in our process, service, or product. Then we're going to remove one of those essential components. We're going to visualize that a virtual product. We're going to identify potential needs, and we're going to modify if we need to. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to start off with an example of Panasonic as a TV. A household, it's just a household, appliance. We all have them, maybe multiples of them in our homes. And we're going to say, well, imagine that we were Panasonic or a company like that, and we were being forced to respond to changes in the market. Our product development team, our project managers were being pulled together and said, well, we need to come up with some more ideas on how we can innovate, how we bring our product to the marketplace. Okay, it could be done with a service, but today we'll just do it with a product. So the first step is to do what? Is to list out the components. So what are the components, typical components for a TV? It's the screen, it's the antenna, the speakers, remote control, etc. There. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to vote on which component we should eliminate first in our example. Okay, so Lisa, if you could help me out with that one, that would be great. And let me know what people think we should eliminate first in our example.
So we have antenna. That was the first one. Good enough. Let's take antenna. Input jacks, remote control.
Okay. So antenna was first?
Yeah.
Antenna came out first. Okay. So we're Panasonic. We're sitting around the table, right? One of the biggest manufacturers of TVs in the world. And somebody says, okay, we're going to play. We're going to play with subtraction. And we're going to now take our existing TV and we're no longer going to offer an antenna in the TV. And we're going to bring this to market. Okay. So our question is, who would want to buy a TV without an antenna? All right, what would be the benefit of selling a TV without an antenna, and who would buy it? Any ideas in the chat? Anybody tell me, why would I want to buy a TV without an antenna? So it doesn't have the functionality of being able to receive the
Someone
TV.
said streaming services instead.
Okay.
So that would be one of the benefits.
Mm-hmm. Right? Remember, this TV has everything still, right? It still has a screen, the speakers, remote control, it still has everything. It's just it no longer has the antenna.
Yeah, another benefit is getting.
Why would Panasonic do that?
Another benefit is getting poor reception in somebody's apartment anyway.
Yeah, right? So maybe you could sell this to a niche market where they don't have television signals.
Or good reception, yeah.
Or good reception anyway. So it really isn't something that they would ever use. And they would, and if you could reduce the price by saying, hey, we're going to sell you a TV that has all the functionality, but we're going to reduce the price because there's no longer an antenna in it. Do you think there might be a market for this?
Yeah, another reason might be security, closed loop functionality. That might be another benefit.
Right, so there might be some applications, maybe even some military applications or some, security applications, as you mentioned, why we might want to have a TV in our offices that don't have an antenna function inside of it, right? So that's an interesting thing.
Sorry, one more idea, minimizing hardware costs and more competitive pricing, which I think you mentioned.
Right, exactly. So Panasonic is going to say, hey, you know what? That's an interesting idea because, for all the reasons that we mentioned here, and in addition, it could reduce costs and we can do this. Now, the question is, would people buy it without an antenna? Well, that's something we would have to go and test, okay? Honestly, we don't have enough knowledge yet to be able to, enough market knowledge. And I'm not sure if anybody on the call here works in the TV manufacturing industry, but typically when you're working on an innovative problem, you would have people who are experts in the field sitting at the table who know a lot more about the market than you and I might know, right? What are some of the other applications that might be there? So let's put the antenna back in, and let's take another example, right? So that was just a virtual example. All we're doing is breaking our fixedness around what a TV has to be, what a component has to be in a TV. What was another one of them, Lisa, that we could play with?
Well, it's 5:31, so you might want to
Move along.
move
Okay.
on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just do one more quick one, because I think we're getting close to the end.
Okay. So input jacks, remote control. Is that what you mean? Like
remote control. Yeah. Okay. Really quickly, we'll do another one. Let's do remote control. Let's just say Panasonic says, okay, we're going to imagine a TV without a remote control.
Oh, I'm thinking 1977.
Right.
Where you're like walking up to the TV and
turning it,
shaking
right?
my hand.
Right. Okay, so we've actually lived this life before, right? Or those of us who are old enough to know have lived this life with no remote control on TVs, but now we've gotten used to it, right? But imagine Panasonic was to go to market and say, I know we have a new TV that you no longer need a remote control with, okay? They may replace that functionality with what?
Well, someone's saying I can use my phone and an app for controlling.
Correct.
Or a voice control, someone else is saying.
Artificial intelligence. I walk in the room, it recognizes me, it puts on my favorite program, okay? There's all sorts of possibilities, options, to be able to say, you know what, we're no longer going to provide a remote control with the TV because it's no longer necessary. It's voice activated. It's, they're using AI. They know what we like, whatever it is, right? There's an option. So the question should be for Panasonic or whoever, is this something that's very feasible, right? Or useful? Would somebody buy a TV? Can you imagine what the ad looks like? You never lose a remote control ever again, right? No more fighting over the remote control. Now we have, you have the ability to control your TV by voice or by your phone or however else, right? You no longer have to worry about that little device or having multiple different devices, or, and we've had this idea before, no need for batteries, or maybe no need to help your grandparents ever program the TV again, okay? Like all sorts of different applications here, because many people have multiple remote controls, and very few people use all the functionality on the remote control. Most people don't know how to use it, including myself, all of the different buttons that are on them, right? Imagine being able to do this without needing a remote control. Now, would that give Panasonic a competitive advantage? Maybe, right? Maybe. And so that's the first question. Is there a market opportunity for somebody to come up with a TV that has no remote control, that doesn't just selling it without a remote control? And then that's the first question. The second question is, can we do it? Do we have the capability, the technology, the know-how to be able to create it? And I would suggest that if you're Panasonic or one of those big manufacturers, you'd probably be able to, you probably have it either in-house or you could hire that type of talent to make that happen for you. So that's the question. Should we do it? Is there a need in the market, or could we see what the need is? Is there a latent need? And can we do this? Can we make this happen? Can this actually really be successful for us? So we would, if we were experts sitting around the table, we would make that assessment and we would take this into prototype stage as the next piece. So this is how the process works, right? We take our model, our service, our product, we remove something, we ask ourselves some questions, right? Now, the reason why I like subtraction the most is because it actually is the most disruptive. It actually asks us to remove functionality rather than adding functionality. So we're more used to adding, okay, additional steps or additional, products or features or whatever into our products and services. We're not as familiar with removing, and removing is harder to do, but it creates the most amount of change. And so when you remove something, you can decide, like a remote control, well, I actually need to replace the functionality, and you can decide how you want to do that. or you can remove it completely and just leave it like this, okay? So this is called the path of most resistance. This is subtraction. We find it very, very interesting. And so we're going to start working on an exercise together. And I think that we can do this. Actually, you know, I don't know if there's ability to break us to 2 or 3 groups. That would be really great. So I don't know, Jennifer, if you can do that. If not, it's okay. We can do it together.
Yeah, we weren't set up for that.
Or sorry, Sydney. Yeah,
Okay.
you're not set up for it
I think
today.
yeah, I think we needed some notice in order for us to
Sure.
program that in, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, don't worry about it. We are going to do it together. What we're going to do is to choose one of these 3 areas, because I don't think we have time to do all 3. But what we're going to do is apply the subtraction model to one of these things. So whether it is recruitment, whether it is taking a look at refocusing issues around stress and motivation in the workplace, we were talking about recruiting, whatever it might be, you can apply innovative thinking to it, right? Because we understand that innovation is just about creating new value, right? It's not something that somebody just has to do in a little corner by themselves. We all have the ability, and matter of fact, we should all be looking for opportunities to bring innovation to the table. So some of the ideas that we had to work on today is on recruiting. Let's start with that. So we could do recruiting. We talk about engagement. We can talk about employee onboarding. Does anyone have a preference? Because I'm okay with any of these. What's in the chat? See anything?
Well, what I'll do is I'll post the 3 areas in chat box with all the different steps. Maybe why don't you just pick one, Marguerite, because I think we're done in about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I thought we had till 6 o'clock. Okay. Well, let's choose recruiting just because we have that in front of us. And let's just say if we were to go through and apply innovative thinking to our recruiting process, let's say we want to hire faster, we want to hire a specific type of, we want to hire more women in our tech department, whatever the undesired phenomena is that you are facing now, you would take the existing process that you would have for recruiting, you would map it out. So this is just a general one. Yours would be different probably, but a general recruiting process. And we would start asking ourselves some questions. And let's use subtraction. So to chat quick, if you were to subtract one step just randomly, and I'm not going to ask you the step, but just a random number between 1 and 13, I believe. Pick a number really randomly. Even you, Lisa, just pick a random
5,
number.
9, 5. So there you go, 5.
5? Okay, let's
do 5.
1, 2, 3, 4,
5.
5. Okay, so we're no longer going to identify candidates. All right, we're going to say, okay, we're keeping our recruiting process exactly the same. We're going to prepare our posts. We're going to post we're going to view resumes, but we're no longer going to identify. We're going to look at the resumes, but we're no longer going to pick the resumes out that we like. We're going to distribute all the candidate information to everyone. Okay? So that's what happens if we subtract that step in this virtual model. Now, our question is, why would we want to do this? How in the world could this help us with that undesirable phenomenon? All right? Could it help fix this issue of not being able to recruit enough women by not selecting different resumes out of that pile? Anyone?
Sorry, Marguerite, what's the question?
If we were to subtract this step on identify from the model,
yeah,
why would we not want to do this, right? So if we were to take that out of our recruiting model, where we no longer distributed, we no longer went through each resume and kind of put them in two separate piles. You know what I mean? That's what they usually do. Take a look at our resumes and say yes and no or whatever. We're no longer going to do that. We're no longer going to identify the candidates. We're only going to look at them, and we're going to distribute all of them to everybody. So we're subtracting that step out of our process. Why would we want to do that? What would be the benefit?
What would be the benefit of that? Yeah.
Anybody? You can come off mute if you want.
So when someone's saying reduces bias, potentially not overlooking anybody. That's from the chat box.
All right. So it is, it's something that's interesting, right? It's an interesting idea. So the first question is, well, could this really benefit us by making sure that everybody saw every application that came in the door, right? Our traditional process says, no, we got to select, we've got to sort them all out, right? In this, you're like, well, no, we're not going to sort them all out. We're going to see every single one. Everybody on the hiring committee is going to see every single resume.
Everybody has a say.
Everyone has an opportunity to make their decision or maybe make a choice, right? And we're going to withdraw this. So should we do it? Yeah, I think there's a case for that. Can we do it? Well, then that's the next step, where you would have to identify how you do this so that it's fair and inclusive and doesn't overwhelm people. Okay. So this is to jog us out of our fixedness that the recruiting process has to look like this. Okay. We have to follow all these steps. And if we don't follow all these steps, we won't be able to accomplish, right? Sometimes it's by asking ourselves some of these, non-traditional questions, like, what happened if we no longer interviewed anyone? What happens if we no longer, made offers? What happens if we didn't do this? These things, which, kind of might shock our system, like, how could we not do that anymore? But that's what provokes the highest degree of innovation. Okay. So I think we are almost there, almost at the very end, and certainly wanted to give you an opportunity to give any feedback. Liked what you saw. We're absolutely willing to send you both our, there's a Harvard Business Review white paper that was written on this process. We're happy to share that with you. Our work is to really use this process to help us break our fixedness around all sorts of problems, but particular problems that deal with women and the workplace. So if that's something that's of interest, we're happy to talk to you about that as well. Are we done for time, or do we have more time?
We have a couple more minutes.
Couple more minutes? Okay.
There is a question from Susan. What job titles have the responsibility to do exercises on existing products we just went through? And another question is, how can we get the HBR? So just Marianne, just put your email in there, and I'll in the chat box, Marianne, and I'm happy to send what Marguerite has talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So send it to Lisa or myself an email. Happy to send out that HBR for sure, and really stay in touch. We're very committed to helping organizations think through this process. More broadly, it can be applied directly to product. It's one of sorry, what was that?
Oh, you're just breaking up a bit.
Oh, sorry. So sorry, what was the first question that you had?
What job titles would have the responsibility to do
titles.
exercises on existing products we just went through?
Yeah. Well, you know what?
And that's a great question.
It's an amazing question. It's an amazing question. It really depends I know that's not a great answer. It does depend per organization. What we find is that, unfortunately, many times product development is in the product, is in marketing typically, okay, with a product development team. That being said, or it's in engineering, depending on the company, right? It could be over on the technical side, it could be over on the marketing side, depends on the business. What you really want to have is a cross-disciplinary, cross-functional team who's involved in, look at your product and services. So even if it's currently held in marketing or currently held in engineering or in the tech IT departments, whoever's running those types of processes should be bringing people in from around the organization. You have representation from every major organization, from every major department, whether it's legal, finance, marketing, sales, customer service, internal tech support, whatever it is, you should have representation at the table. They're really going to bring a diversity in the way that they think, but also in the type of solution that they're going to see some things differently that other people in departments will not see. Important to have legal at the table. Important to have people, if you're legal at the table, you may have created the best product, the best service, the best solution, and then when it gets to legal, they'll be like, yeah, no, can't do it. Okay, it's happened more than once. So it's great to have them there if you can. As many different departments, having input into the process is very useful for you to create something that's truly innovative, meaning that you can actually implement it, right? So hopefully that helped to answer the question. Yeah. So I will end that off unless there's another question. Sorry, I can't see the chat. I don't know what's going on here.
Nope, that's it. I think we'll just say adieu, and our emails are there if any questions. Thanks, Marguerite. Thanks, Cindy, for your help.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it.